A widow found something breathing beneath the rotten floor of her abandoned trailer, and what happened next would destroy the powerful and rewrite the meaning of human courage. What would you do if you discovered a dying stranger under your home, knowing that saving him could cost you everything? Soledad Martinez lost everything in a single moment. The truck carrying apple pickers overturned in 1987 on a deadly curve in the Sierra de Chihuahua. Her husband Ramiro never came home. The company handed her an envelope, 150,000 pesos, a pittance, barely enough for 1 month, the price they placed on a good man, a father of 5 children. She held her husband's entire worth in the pocket of her worn apron. Now she stood alone with 5 mouths to feed. Mateo, 12 years old, suddenly the man of the house. The twins Luna and Estrella, 8. Little Tadeo, 5, and baby Luz still nursing. The landlord gave them 2 weeks to leave their small adobe room. Soledad had no family, no safety net. For 3 months, they slept on the cold floor of the church sacristy, surviving on charity and the few pesos she earned washing clothes in the river. But pressure from the town's prominent families grew. They didn't approve of a widow and 5 children occupying God's house. Then came the morning that changed everything. The sacristan told her the landlord had burned their few remaining possessions. Soledad felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She had 80,000 pesos left from that blood money, tied in a sock at her waist, money she'd sworn never to touch except for life or death. This was that moment. She walked for days with baby Luz wrapped against her chest, the other 4 clinging to her skirt, knocking on every door, begging for work, for shelter, for anything. But in small-town Creole, a widow with 5 children wasn't an opportunity, she was a problem. Doors closed with polite excuses. The foreman at the sawmill looked her up and down with eyes that made her skin crawl. "A young woman like you shouldn't struggle so much," he said, his voice dripping with implication. "I could offer you a comfortable little house, good food, in exchange for company." Bile rose in Soledad's throat. She turned and left, what little dignity she had intact. For 3 nights they huddled under a stone bridge covered with cardboard Mateo had found, the cold cutting through to their bones. Then in a grey afternoon, inside La Sierra grocery store, she overheard 2 men talking. One was El Chivo, a man who did hauling jobs. "That trailer's still rotting out there," he said. "The owner, some crazy gringo, died years ago. Nobody claimed it. The municipality wants it gone, but it's too deep in the woods. They're asking 100,000 pesos just for occupation rights, but I bet they'd take 50. The place is cursed, they say. Far from everything, only good for someone with nothing left to lose." Soledad's heart hammered. A trailer for 100,000, maybe less. She had 80. She approached the men, her steps firm despite her trembling knees. "Excuse me, gentlemen. I'm listening about that trailer in the forest." "Where exactly is it?" The men looked surprised. "Lady," El Chivo began with a half-smile, "that's no place for a woman, especially with kids. It's 5 kilometers from the main road, deep in the woods near Dry Creek. The trailer's on cement blocks, but the floor's rotted. No doors, broken windows. And people say things, strange noises at night, like the gringo Howard who owned it is still there, guarding his property." Soledad swallowed, but showed no fear. "And if someone offers 80,000 pesos, do you think they'd accept?" El Chivo laughed. "Lady, that thing isn't worth 10, but if you have the courage to live in that pest nest, I'll take you to the municipal secretary myself. I guarantee they'll accept just to get it off their books." "Let's do it then," Soledad said, untying the sock from her waist and counting the worn bills on the counter. The sound of old paper seemed to echo in the store's silence. The next day, El Chivo met her with a sealed paper in his hand. "Congratulations, Doña Soledad. You're now the legal occupant of a 1960 aluminum trailer with 400 square meters of forest land." The secretary laughed so hard that someone wanted to pay for that trash. He grabbed the bills and sealed the paper without questions. The 5-kilometer dirt road became a narrow path the truck could barely navigate. pine branches scraped the vehicle's sides. The deeper they went, the thicker and more silent the forest became. When they arrived, there it was. The trailer rested crooked on cement blocks like a stranded metal animal. The aluminum, once shiny, was now dull, stained with rust and moss. The door hung from a single hinge. The windows were empty, dark holes. The interior was a nightmare. The smell of dampness, dead animals, and rot hit her face. The linoleum floor was lifted, and in several sections completely rotten, revealing damp earth below. Raccoon and rat droppings everywhere. Thick cobwebs hung from the low ceiling. But Soledad saw beyond the trash. She saw 4 metal walls that once clean would protect her from the cold Sierra wind. She saw a roof that, though leaking, was better than open sky. She saw a space that was hers, that nobody could take away. "It's perfect," she said quietly, and there was no irony in her voice. The first days were a battle against filth and abandonment. Soledad woke before dawn and worked until her muscles screamed. She dragged out the rotted mattress, swept kilos of dried excrement, rat nests, leaves. She scrubbed every centimeter with water the twins carried from the creek. To cover the window holes, she used the same cardboard they'd slept under at the bridge. On the 6th morning, she decided they couldn't keep sleeping on pine needles in the corner. The floor in the trailer's center was so rotten it sank dangerously with each step. "We have to tear out this rotten wood before Tadeo or the girls fall through and get hurt," she told Mateo. Kneeling, they began pulling up pieces of linoleum and plywood with their bare hands. The wood was damp, almost dissolved. Then Soledad's fingers struck something that wasn't soft earth or rusted metal. It was wood. Solid wood. Her heart began racing without apparent reason. She knelt and started digging with her hands, removing the pulp of rotten wood and accumulated damp earth. There, a few centimeters below the original floor level, wedged between 2 chassis beams, were wooden boards. 4 wide planks of old but solid pine, each a meter long, assembled perfectly, forming a square. With her heart pounding harder, Soledad cleaned all the dirt around them. She tried lifting one edge using her nails. It resisted at first, stuck by dried mud, but then gave way with a long, complaining creak. She pried up the first board, then the second. There, in the middle of her new home's floor, was a square opening 1 meter per side, descending into absolute blackness. Someone had dug this. The former owner, the gringo Howard. But why? To hide what? Soledad leaned over, and the smell that rose was different from dampness. It was metallic, sour, a smell of confinement and sweat. She was about to call Mateo to bring their only candle when she heard a sound so low she thought it was wind, but she heard it again. It was movement, a rustling like fabric against dry earth, and then a ragged, terrified breath. Her blood froze. "There was something alive down there. Who's there?" Soledad shouted, her voice trembling, grabbing the metal piece she'd used as a lever. "Come out or I'll call the police." The silence that followed was total, oppressive. Then, like a whisper from the earth's entrails, a weak, raspy voice, masculine and clearly terrified, responded in broken Spanish with a strange accent. "Help, please. Don't let them find me." "Don't scream." Soledad almost dropped the metal. There was a man hiding in a hole dug under her trailer. Her first thought was absolute terror. He was a criminal, a fugitive, the crazy gringo Howard. Were her children in danger? But the only response was a dry cough and a moan of pain. "No, I can't. I'm hurt." "Please, lady, water, just water." "They're looking for me." The voice was young, not threatening, just desperate. With her heart in her throat, Soledad made a decision. She needed to see. She lit their only candle. "I'm lowering the candle. I'm going to see who you are. If you try anything, I swear by my children, I'll hurt you." What the weak light revealed made her choke back a scream. The hole was about 2 meters deep. Crude holes carved in the earth wall served as steps, and curled in the farthest corner was a boy, not a man, barely a teenager. maybe 19 or 20. His skin was pale or had been under layers of filth, mud, and dried blood. His blonde hair was matted. He wore what had once been jeans and a cotton shirt, now in shreds, stiff with dark blood. One leg was extended at an unnatural angle, swollen and purple, with 2 dirty boards tied to the sides with cloth strips, an improvised splint. His face was disfigured by blows, one eye completely closed by swelling, his lips split, his hands destroyed, nails broken, knuckles raw, as if he'd tried to dig with them. But his eyes, the one visible eye, was open, bulging, fixed on her with terror so pure, so animal, that Soledad felt a stab in her stomach. "My God," Soledad whispered, feeling tears well up. "Good God, boy, what did they do to you?" The young man trembled so violently his teeth chattered. "No, don't turn me in," he begged, his voice a hoarse croak. "Please, lady, for the love of God, don't let them find me. They'll kill me. I swear they'll kill me." Soledad felt her heart breaking. This wasn't the gringo Howard, wasn't a killer. This was a child, a lost and terrified gringo, hidden under the earth like a wounded animal. "Calm down," she said softly, crouching slowly. "I'm not turning you into anyone." "I'm not going to hurt you. I swear it on my 5 children's lives. My name is Soledad. I just moved into this trailer today, hours ago." "I didn't know anyone was here," the boy blinked, confused. "You moved in. This place was abandoned." "Well, it's not abandoned anymore," Soledad said firmly. "It's mine now. It's my house." "And what's your name?" The boy hesitated, then with an almost inaudible voice replied, "Alex, my name is Alex Thompson." Over the next hour, Alex told his story in fragments. He was a student from the University of Colorado, studying biology and conservation. He'd come to Mexico as a volunteer for a project on illegal logging in the Sierra Tarahumara. He had a camera documenting massive tree trucks leaving at night. But it wasn't just wood. One night he followed the trucks into an unmapped canyon. There was a clandestine landing strip, small, dirt, but lit with generators. He watched them unload logs, but some were hollow. They pulled out packages wrapped in tan tape and loaded new weapons into the same hollows. It was an exchange. He saw Don Artemio himself there, talking with men who weren't from around here, men in expensive clothes speaking English. And he saw the chief of the rural police, Commander Valles, receiving a briefcase. "I was hidden in the rocks," Alex continued, his body shaking at the memory. "I was taking photos with a long lens. I had proof. But I stepped on a branch. Small sound, but one of the guards heard me. They started shooting. I ran back to my jeep, but they were faster. They surrounded me. They dragged him back to the clearing in front of Don Artemio. Take his camera and burn it, Artemio said without even looking at him. And make sure the coyotes eat well tonight. Make it look like an accident, like the gringo got lost and fell off a cliff. They beat him, all of them, with their boots, with rifle butts. Commander Valles was the one who broke his leg, jumped on it. Alex heard the crack. Then they laughed and left him bleeding in the woods kilometers away with his broken leg. But I crawled, Alex whispered. I don't know for how long, days, maybe one long night. I lost consciousness. When I woke, it was raining. I was so thirsty. I just knew I had to move, get away from that place. I dragged myself with my hands. He lifted his destroyed hands as proof. I saw this trailer. It looked abandoned, a refuge. I crawled through the fallen door. I was lying on the floor right here, shaking from cold, and I felt the boards were loose. Instinct. I pushed, found the hole. I thought, here they won't find me. It's dark down here. I slid inside. It was agony with my leg, and I managed to pull the boards back, and I stayed here, listening, waiting for them to come back, waiting to die. Then I heard your children. I thought they'd come back to finish the job. Soledad understood. This boy hadn't just witnessed a crime, he'd seen the heart of Don Artemio's empire. 50,000 pesos wasn't a reward, it was the price to silence him forever. She thought of that money, enough to buy a real house, send her children to school, live without fear. All she had to do was walk to town and tell Don Artemio where the boy was. But then she looked at those terrified eyes, that broken body, this child. She looked at her own calloused hands and knew there was no choice.
"You're not going to die here," Soledad said finally, her voice trembling but full of conviction.
"And they're not going to find you. We'll find a way." Over the following days, Soledad nursed Alex back from the edge of death. She had no medicine, so she walked back to town, a dangerous journey. At La Sierra grocery store, she encountered Don Elias, the elderly owner. When she asked for alcohol and supplies, his sharp eyes studied her trembling hands.
"It's not for Tadeo, is it?"
he said quietly.
"It's for the boy, the gringo they're hunting," Soledad broke down.
Don Elias revealed he'd lost his own grandson to Don Artemio's violence 2 years earlier. "Helping you won't bring back my grandson," he said. "But if that boy lives, if he gets out and tells what he saw, it's a small stone in that monster's shoe." He gave her mezcal to clean the wound and penicillin powder for livestock that would work on humans. He also told her about La Escondida, an abandoned mining camp 3 days' journey across the canyon into the desert, where people who'd lost everything to Artemio hid. He promised false documents in 2 weeks, but 2 weeks proved impossible. On the 10th day, as Soledad washed rags outside, she heard engines. Mateo's quail whistle pierced the air, the maximum alert signal. 2 trucks were forcing their way up the narrow path. Commander Vales and the sawmill foreman arrived with armed men. Soledad blocked the trailer entrance, her body a shield. Inside, she and Mateo frantically hid Alex under the sink cabinet, covering him with dirty rags and dented pots. Vales entered, suspicious. "What's that smell?" "Smells like a cantina and medicine." Soledad used her prepared lie about Tadeo's infected knee. Vales walked through the tiny space, his heavy boots passing 1/2 meter from where Alex hid. He pulled the blanket from her terrified children. Tadeo's knee was visibly healthy. Vales's suspicion was poison. Then the foreman kicked the pile of rags covering Alex. The metallic clang of his boot against pots was deafening. Soledad closed her eyes, expecting the scream, the gunshot, the end. But no sound came.
Alex hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound.
He'd bitten through his own lip to avoid crying out when the boot struck his broken leg. "Just trash and stink in rags," the foreman spat. Vales looked at the miserable scene, the terrified children, the overwhelming smell. "Let's get out of here," he told the foreman. "This place stinks of misery, not of gringo." But as they left, Vales added with sarcasm that chilled Soledad's bones, "If you see a blonde gringo, don't bother reporting it." "I doubt it's worth coming up to this dump for him." Soledad knew they'd return. They couldn't wait for documents. That night, under cover of darkness, 7 figures, a widow with 5 starving children and a broken American boy, disappeared into the Black Forest. What followed was 3 days of hell. They descended a nearly vertical cliff face while bullets ricocheted off rock around them. They crossed the canyon floor, a furnace where the second water bottle ran dry at noon. Baby Luz stopped crying, a lethargic silence more terrifying than any scream. Alex was dead weight, hopping on one leg supported by Soledad. 3 hops, then collapse, rest 1 minute, repeat. At dusk on the 3rd day, when Soledad collapsed and couldn't rise, Mateo spotted smoke. La Escondida. They crawled the final kilometer. Men emerged from hovels made of rusted sheet metal and mesquite wood, thin, bearded, distrustful. "Artemio Vales snake names," an old man said. "Bring them in. Give the lady water." They stayed 7 months in that refuge of displaced Tarahumaras and mestizos. A healer named Doña Rosa looked at Alex's leg. Gangrene, but the mezcal and penicillin from old Elias stopped it.
"You're lucky, boy. And you got guts. Widow." With herbs and a red-hot knife, she saved the leg.
Though Alex would limp permanently. When Alex was strong enough, The miners guided him north through routes only they knew, weeks through the desert until he crossed the border in Sonora. Soledad heard nothing for a year. Then a miner returned with a letter from Don Elias, who'd died of old age. It was from Alex. He'd reached Colorado and hadn't stayed silent. He'd contacted journalists, human rights groups, spoken of the sawmill, the landing strip, Artemio's operation. In 1990, news reached La Escondida like thunder. The federal government, pressured by the United States over the attempted murder of an American student, had raided the sawmill. There was a shootout. Commander Valles was killed. Don Artemio was arrested, not for drugs but for tax evasion, illegal logging, and the murder of Don Elias's grandson. Denver, Colorado, January 2011. Snow falls outside. Soledad Martinez, now 62, watches her grandchildren play in the yard of a small, warm apartment. Mateo, Luna, Estrella, and Tadeo live nearby, all American citizens with families.
Luz is in college.
The doorbell rings. It's Alex Thompson, 43, a biology professor at the local university. His limp is pronounced. He carries a dish. "Hello, Mama Sole," he says, the nickname he gave her in La Escondida. "I brought you this apple pie, like the one you said I asked for in my delirium." Soledad laughs and hugs him. They sit in the kitchen while children's laughter fills the air.
"Sometimes I dream about the trailer," Soledad says quietly.
The smell, the fear, you under the sink. Alex nods, his face suddenly somber.
"I dream about the hole in the foreman's boot."
I bit my tongue almost in half to not scream. "You bought that wreck with everything you had, Soledad," Alex says, looking at her. "You thought you were buying a roof." Soledad watches the snow fall, looks at her safe, loud grandchildren, looks at the man whose life she saved and who, in turn, saved her entire family by sponsoring their asylum.
"No," she says, her eyes full of hard-won clarity. "I bought something better."
"I bought the opportunity to teach my children that a gram of courage is worth more than a ton of fear."
"I bought the right to truly call myself their mother."